It was the film that reinvigorated a franchise and contained one of the most celebrated catchphrases and memes of the modern internet era. As a Starfleet instructor, Admiral Kirk is enjoying the late years of his service. But when an old nemesis is freed from his prison and captures a weapon of incredible power, it's up to Admiral Kirk and his crew to stop his enemy from fulfilling his long-awaited plans for revenge. Wes and Darling Beat go full warp speed in this review of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan on View the Right Thing.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of View the Right Thing. I am Wes, and I've got with me, as always, Darling Beat. Say hi, Beat.
Hi, Beat.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I really enjoyed the movie we just watched, so I'm feeling all right. It gets me a little in the feels.
Yeah, you could say that again.
Any life things you want to talk about? Any updates? Anything exciting going on in your world?
Nope, just living, looking for a house.
Yeah, we are lately. We've been on fire with our pre-movie talk banter. It's always anything new? No, not really. How about you? No, not really.
Life goes on.
Yeah. So, have you seen any new trailers?
That I have not.
You have not. I saw the new Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer, Quantumania. Man, that looks fun. Every Marvel movie, I'm just like, God, that looks like so much fun.
What is the actor's name that plays Ant-Man?
Paul Rudd?
Paul Rudd. I adore Paul Rudd.
Well, everybody adores Paul Rudd. If somebody doesn't like Paul Rudd, there's something wrong with them. That's like a just guaranteed sociopath or something. Like, you don't trust that person. It's like people who don't like dogs. You're not supposed to trust those people either. People who don't like Paul Rudd, don't trust them.
I always love the character he plays, because he pretty much plays the same funny, not funny, but
yeah.
No, there's different types of funny. You have the dry funny, you have the stupid funny, you have those
Sure.
guys. His funny is just so beautiful. Chef's kiss. I love it so much.
Yeah, he's just really engaging, and you're like, I want to be friends with that guy. Yeah, he actually did a pretty interesting movie called Mute. Did you see Mute? I think it was a Netflix movie, and it's made by a filmmaker I really like by the name of Duncan Jones. Duncan Jones was the son of David Bowie, and he made this brilliant movie called Moon, which Steve and I did an episode of the podcast on Moon, I believe. And it's Sam Rockwell, and it's pretty much just Sam Rockwell the entire movie. He's pretty much the only actor. It's about a guy who's living on a moon base that mines, I think, hydrogen? I can't remember which. Probably hydrogen makes more sense. Rocks on the moon. And that's what people use for energy in the future. And he's made a couple other movies. He did the Warcraft movie, and he did another one that my mind is just blanking on right now. But then he did Mute, which is sort of a follow-up to Moon. It takes place in the same world. It's futuristic thing, and Paul Rudd's in it. And they do a really cool sort of reference to MASH, the movie MASH from the 70s, with his character. So he's kind of funny, but also kind of serious at the same time. And Paul Rudd's very good in it. And it's a slightly different role than you would expect to see of him, which is nice.
You said it was Netflix?
I believe it's on Netflix.
Okay. Well, if it's still there, I'll definitely check it out.
Here, I'll tell you what. I'll take a look. Vamp, quick, while I'm doing this. Mute is what it's called. And it is Netflix, and it's got the lead in it is what's his name? Alexander Skarsgård, who's from like True Blood and stuff, and Tarzan and whatnot. You know, very, very pretty. That guy.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of that Skarsgård family, like, you know, Bill Skarsgård and Stellan Skarsgård is their father.
I think it was Eric in True Blood.
He was Eric Northman. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because he's got that Viking ancestry. And so his father is Stellan Skarsgård, who's in like a crazy amount of things. He's in a bunch of the Marvel movies, most specifically the Thor films, and Good Will Hunting, and just a ton of things. And then his brother is Pennywise the Clown in the It film, in the newer It film.
Literally just talking about him the other day. I love him. He played in a show on Netflix. It was really good. It was weird.
Okay.
I don't remember it, but he was like a little vampire kid, but he was cool.
Oh, was that Hemlock Grove?
Yes, yeah. Hemlock Grove with his weird sister. Oh, so good. It was weird.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Speaking of it, so you didn't see the trailer, the teaser for the new the new It project?
No.
They put out a teaser. It doesn't come out till September 2024, so we're 2 years away from it. It's called Welcome to Derry, and it's about what's the guy's name? Bob, the guy that was Pennywise in the sideshow. Bob something. Anyways, it's about him and sort of the origin of that. So it takes place in the past, and it's called Welcome to Derry, and I think it's going to be a limited series, maybe on HBO.
That's exciting.
So that's
super exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So there's a little teaser that's out. It doesn't really have much. It does sort of imply why the makeup on the clown is the way it is, which is pretty cool. So worth checking out that teaser. So fun stuff. Oh boy. So happy Thanksgiving. This is our Thanksgiving friendship episode. I'm thankful for you, Beat.
I'm uber thankful for you.
What? Get out of here with that. Getting all choked up. So we, you know, as people probably figured out, we're weekly now. We're releasing episodes every week. And we'll talk a little bit about it after we get done talking about the movie, but we've got, we're going to start Christmas episodes starting next week, which is pretty freaking exciting. So yay. What'd you say?
I said Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas. All right. So should we talk about this movie, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's time to get super serious.
All right. So I'm gonna do the really short. There's multiple descriptions of this film, but I like doing the really short ones. So I'll do the little description, and then I'll ask the normal beginning questions, and then we'll get into notes and stuff. So the description of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is: with the assistance of the Enterprise crew, Admiral Kirk must stop an old nemesis, Khan Noonien Singh, from using the life-generating Genesis device as the ultimate weapon. So that's the quick version of the plot. So the first question, as always, is: Beat, did you enjoy this movie?
Okay.
Oh boy. She started with okay.
In the beginning, I was like, man, this is just so. It felt like the same room over and over again for me, and I was just like, goodness gracious.
I get it.
But it got really good. I don't want to admit this, but I did cry.
Oh, you did?
I did cry just a little bit.
That's all right.
Which is always a good sign for me, because if a movie can pull an emotion out of you, it's good for me.
Yeah, I love it.
So I ended up actually really liking it, and I've been putting off watching anything Star Trek.
Yeah.
Star Trek.
this is a good one. Like if you're, it's weird to say this, but this is kind of a good one to start with because, there's lore that's clearly been built on, but you don't actually have to know it. So the background of this particular story is it came from one episode in, I think, the first season of the original Star Trek series. And it's called Bad Seed, and it's basically they talk about it a little bit in the movie, but the Enterprise is going around and they find this old derelict ship just floating in space, and so when they investigate it, they find that there's people in like life pods, like in cryosleep, and they as they're like in the ship sort of turning things on, it kicks the machines to life, and it triggers the awakening process of the most important person on the ship, and that's this guy, Kahn. And there's a little bit of mystery about why they're out there in space, why they're in cryosleep. It turns out they're from like the future for us, 1999. Obviously not anymore, and which would be the 200 years in the past for the Enterprise crew, and he's like kind of power hungry, and it turns out that they were part of a group of genetically modified humans that sort of lorded their superiority and started a eugenics war on mankind, and they were part of a penal colony in Australia. And so what they did was they were like, these people are too dangerous to leave on Earth, so we'll just shoot them the fuck into space. So they put him on this ship and they shoot him into space, and then 200 years later the Enterprise crew finds them. And he tries to take over the ship and tries to kill at the time Captain Kirk and the crew, and there's a historian that's part of the Enterprise crew, and I think her name is Marla McGivers, and she sort of falls in love with, she's just turned on by him, and he's very controlling and domineering and stuff, and forces her to get on her knees, and if you want to be in my room, you got to beg me to stay in my room, that kind of thing. He's a power, but she totally succumbs to it. And so she helps him take over the ship. Anyways, the Enterprise crew outsmarts him, and they're trying to figure out what to do with him, and they start this court-martial process, and Kirk is basically like, I'm going to dismiss all the charges against Kahn, and I'm going to give him some choices here. We can send him down to this planet that has some life, and it will be hard, but you can start over with your colony, and that's what he chooses to do. And then he gives Marla the option of either facing a court-martial in Starfleet or going with Kahn, and she chooses to go with Kahn. And so
Marla was his wife.
Marla was his wife, so they sort of allude to that again in this. So there's, but you didn't really need to know that to watch this movie. I think it's kind of an interesting, nice background to have for the podcast. But and they Spock does this really interesting thing, and they sort of, again, it kind of comes full circle in this movie, and it's just sort of a little wink to people who knew the episode. And at the end of the very end of the episode, Spock talks about how these people are going down there to start new life. It would be really interesting to come back in 100 years and see what life has turned into. And I think they sort of kind of wink to that a little bit at the end of this, where they're sort of like, I wonder what's going to happen with this planet. I wonder what life is going to be. We should come back here one day. And so I thought that was kind of a nice little nod to the episode.
Cute.
Yeah. So that's sort of the background on that. Do you want to go through your notes, and then we'll just see what kind of fun facts we can come up with?
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
All right. What you got, homie?
First, I have a question.
Yes.
So is this where the saying "Beam me up, Scotty" comes from?
So Star Trek.
Does that come from?
It comes from.
So that comes from Star Trek.
Yeah, it comes from Star Trek.
I didn't know that.
And technically, I don't think anyone has ever said "Beam me up, Scotty." I think that's one of those weird, fun TV / movie facts where he's always
Like a
like,
Mandela.
yeah, well, yeah, just that people just screwed it up. But I think he always says something like, you know, to beam up Mr. Scott or beam me up Mr. Scott or whatever. He usually calls him Mr. Scott. Did you notice that they kept calling Savick? Most of the people would call her Mr. Savick.
Mr.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So in military terms, the people above your rank will always refer down as Mr. whether you're a man or a woman. And people looking up, so people below your rank would refer to you if you were a woman as ma'am. So that's why they kept calling, because usually the people talking to Savick were Spock or
Hired.
Kirk.
Yeah. That's such a weird custom to have, but you do you, boo. I'd be so weirded out.
Yeah.
Like the whole time I was like, is this an error? Like, what's happening? I'm not loading correctly.
No. Well, and Kirstie Alley was a huge Star Trek fan when she was like a child. I think the story is she's like 9, and she used to watch Star Trek on TV, and she loved Spock, and she made her own ears and used to wear them around the house, and she used to pretend that Spock was her dad, and that's how she played. Was she loved Star Trek, and so she eventually got to audition and become so in this she's part Vulcan, part Romulan. They don't really explain it very well in the movie, which is why she shows some emotion but not a ton. But and apparently she was so like jazzed about being a part of this that she wore her ears home from set. Like she would wear them and sleep in them and stuff. Like she was like a fan dream come true. So
Adorable.
yeah, it's pretty adorable.
And I love her so much. I had the hugest crush as a kid on her.
Yeah. Well, I have sad news. So in part 3, Savick is played by a different actress. And then in part 4, they were going to have the person that they actually originally wanted to cast, which was Kim Cattrall. They ended up casting Kirstie Alley instead for what I think maybe scheduling issues or something. She ended up being available for part 4, and so they were going to have her replace the actress again for Savick. And she was like, no, I don't want to be the third person to play the same character. So they basically wrote a new character. But Savick is in like books and comic books and stuff. So
upsetting that they just used someone else.
Yeah, but it might have been the time when she got on Cheers. She became a regular on Cheers. It might have been right around that same time.
Yeah.
So that might be why. But yeah, she's great in this, and the character of Savick is like, I think, such a badass. I think she's so cool.
Yeah, I like her a lot.
All right, sorry, I derailed the the notes. What you got?
Who needs rails?
Yeah.
So my first note was the dirt box. So when they go to the planet that they're on, I forgot whether it was 5 or 6, because they were saying a bunch of planet stuff.
Well, I think they thought it was SETI Alpha 6.
But it was actually 5.
But it was really 5, which is where they left Kahn and his crew.
Yeah, because something hit that planet and it got knocked somewhere or something.
So SETI Alpha 6, the one that they intended to go to, exploded, and it knocked their orbit off and turned it into a wasteland.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think he said 6 months after they left, so it's like some pretty bad timing.
So my thing, the dirt box. So when they went to the planet and they're in there, the one thing I did notice was the dirt box. It reminded me of Tremors.
Oh,
I don't know if you
absolutely.
remember the Kevin Bacon movie.
Yeah, with the sandworms.
Yeah, it freaked me out. I was like, oh my god, because that movie scares me.
So real quick, before we go any further, I just want to say that I know they're not called sandworms. I know some viewster's gonna send me a tweet or something that I called them a sandworm. They're called graboids. I understand this, so you don't need to at me, okay? Carry on, Beat.
I thought that was really funny. One thing I did, I really did like the symbolism for when they came in, they looked at a stack of books, and one of the books on the stack was Moby Dick. And I feel like Kahn felt like Kirk was his white whale and he was just like not giving up. And I loved that. And I loved that I seen that. I felt so proud of myself.
Yeah, it's excellent. That's really smart. There's actually multiple things on that shelf. I think King Lear is also on that shelf, which is sort of a guy who just like makes a shitload of bad decisions. But Moby Dick is like kind of, yeah, I think like you really hit the nail on the head with that one. And in a future Star Trek film with a completely different character, there is some similar themes, and Moby Dick is pretty present in that. And I think they maybe even used some lines from the Moby Dick story in the dialogue in this, and maybe just like adjusted them a little bit. The I stab at thee might be Moby Dick. That whole thing with my last breath. But good observation. Good job.
Gold star.
Gold star.
Yes. Also ill to the ears.
Ew to the ears. I almost said something. I was like, you don't have an ear thing, do you? Like a fear of like bugs in your ear? Desiree does.
Ooh. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So she can't handle that scene.
I do not. It did give me a little spine chill, but I was okay with it. You know.
Yeah.
I like the weird.
So the when they did the ears, the bugs crawling into the ears, they're like being pulled on a string or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they made really big like molds of the actors' ears, so that way they could do that special effect. So
yeah, like when it cut
version.
to the captain's ear and it was like really obviously fake, I was like, that's so funny, just because the make of it. But I was like, that's so cool how they thought of that. It was gross though.
Yes, and well, I'll get to. I'll get to. Remind me to talk about some similarities with some other Star Trek films in a little bit. I probably shouldn't jump off this just yet, but
Another thing is Buff Kahn. When he
Buff
took
Kahn.
off yeah, because like he was like, I'm engineered or whatever. So
Yeah.
like I thought brain wise, I did not think body wise. And when he took off the thing and his chest looked fake.
Did you start sweating? Were you like, oh my? Yeah. So
No.
so the fake chest thing, it was actually a urban legend for a long time. People believed that he had a fake chest, sort of what you're saying. But it turns out that the dude was just kind of jacked, and he did a lot of push-ups, and that's actually his real chest.
Dang. Just trying to deter his hard work.
Yeah. When I see it, I could just go, it's so smooth. It's so smooth and hairless. It's crazy.
Just looked his pecs looked real squishy.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Not that I was looking too hard.
What's your next note?
Are
Are you okay? Are you just taking a moment to like think back on Ricardo Montalban's chest? Do I need to give you a minute? Do you need to excuse yourself?
I'm trying not to laugh so hard.
Oh yeah.
But it was just so funny to me. When Christy Alley when she got into the elevator and he was like, "Did you change your hair?" And then the doctor came in and he was like, "Did she change her hair?" He's like, "Not that I noticed."
Yeah. Yeah,
The little quips were funny.
they do a really good job of sort of like their familiarity, sort of funny moments between them all. They just had a good rapport, all those actors. So, I mentioned to make a note. I don't know if you did or not about the sandy planet.
Yes, I got three notes for you.
Okay, so the sandy planet thing, since we were kind of talking about that whole scene, so my understanding is they built like a platform of the planet surface, elevated off the ground in a sound stage, and they had a shitload of sand and these massive fans, and I guess the like the whole crew and stuff, they had to be bundled up because it was just like you go in there and it's just sand whipping around everywhere. And the 2 actors in those suits had to be given they were like completely sealed, so they had to be given oxygen. And they could only communicate through their microphones. They couldn't just talk to somebody and somebody hear them. So they had to use equipment to do that. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think unless you're like claustrophobic or afraid of like suffocating or something, which we'll come back to again when we get closer to the end of the film. There's a whole other thing about suffocating.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What's your next note?
Outweighs the need of the many or the few or the one.
Yeah. The needs of the many outweigh. Yeah, so that's like such an iconic quote, and I wanted to just make sure that we noted it because it's from Star Trek, and how cool is that? Like, I'm sure you must have heard that phrase before, right? No? Okay. It's used in like a ton of other movies and TV shows and stuff. So,
this is probably why it never rings to me, is because I've never seen Star Trek. But now that I have, I'll probably be paying extra attention to it.
No, when you hear it. Mm-hmm. What else you got
there?
It
was beautiful, though.
It was.
Well, in the end, it was beautiful.
In the end, it was very beautiful.
Bad.
Yeah, in the end, he changes a few to the one. It's like, oh my god.
The Genesis animation.
Oh yeah. So let me see. I have a note here, and I'm just going to scroll through real quick to find it again because I want to make sure I get it correctly. And if I don't see it right away, I'll just wing it to the best I can. All right, I'm not seeing it right away. I have a lot of notes. They're just not organized. I'm a dummy for not organizing them. So the computer animation is the first computer animated sequence for a feature film in the history of feature films. So that when they're showing the Genesis project and you see like the mountains being built and stuff, that whole thing is the first animated sequence. And it was done by some guy, a division at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, which was the George Lucas, guys who worked on Star Wars and stuff. And that division eventually went off and created their own thing, which became Pixar.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So this was their first film animation.
Yeah,
or sequence.
Yeah, and Pixar, like, there's much more complicated origins to Pixar. Pixar is a bunch of students who were doing like sort of like contesty, like this is what what we think the future is and how it might be able to be applied towards telling stories and stuff. And so the story of how Pixar started is actually more rooted in that. But what came out of this company ended up like, basically taking the Pixar guys and expanding, and that's what became Pixar. But so I don't want to imply that this went off and became Pixar and then we had Toy Story. The Pixar story is actually much more intricate and involved in that. But yeah,
that is still pretty interesting. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Anything?
My next note is I wanted to ask you if you know what sauced for the goose. Odds will be even. But
I think it's just like it kind of doesn't matter. Like it's like an extra thing. So it's just like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It's sauce for the goose. It's just another element that's just a part of this. And
never heard sauced for the goose. That's all I wanted to ask.
I hadn't either, so I don't believe you. I don't believe you for feeling that way because I hadn't heard it either. So
I'm gonna deep dive on that saying after this.
Yeah.
I didn't like how David was Kirk's son. I mean, that's a weird thing to say
because he's a tool, or what?
That. And I don't know, it felt unnecessary to the plot, but then it kind of felt like it needed the plot. it just didn't make any sense to me to be here.
I understand what you're saying. I think, the first movie, so they did Star Trek the Motion Picture, which in its own right is fine. But it was like a $40 million movie. Had like all these crazy special effects, and it was kind of a big deal because one, Star Trek people who had been missing the show got to see their thing back, but also they got to see the Enterprise on the big screen, and some of that is a little bit recycled in this, like when the ship is leaving the docking bay kind of near the beginning, they have Saavik take it out of dock, and and they do like a ton of like spaceship porn, basically, where it's just big long takes of a ship moving really, really slowly to like show the size and the beauty of it. And that's the first movie's a lot of stuff like that, where they're going, hey, you're seeing this on a big screen for the first time. Look how big this ship looks like. It's beautiful. And this movie was a lot smaller. This was only like an $11 million budget, and they tried to bring it down quite a bit. They actually reused some shots from that first film. My brain just completely shut off. Remind me why we started this conversation. What was your note?
I felt like David being
David's
son was unnecessary for the plot.
Okay, thank you. So sorry about that. I think there was a need when they started bringing the scale down and sort of wanting to do something different, because the first movie didn't do critically all that well. This second film actually made less money than the first film, but was more profitable because the budget was lower, and it made less money partially due to the fact that the first movie didn't do as well. So I think there was sort of a need to like connect it and make it sort of feel bigger than it really was. So I think David being Kirk's son, it's this like kind of fantastic coincidence. And I think to your point, it's a little bit of an old thing. Maybe in, the early 80s, it wasn't quite so old hat, but I think it was just born out of this need to sort of
like in the plot,
get more bang for your buck. I will say that David does return in part 3.
Ew.
And the developments of all of that between 2 and 3 greatly affect like further down the line, all the way into like 6 especially, which is one of the ones I really liked. Yeah,
I'm not a fan of David.
I'm not either. When he walked onto the bridge near the end of the movie, and he's got like a fucking sweater tied around his shoulders like a 80s Chad, I was just like, come on, dude. like it just made him like as much of a tool as they possibly could.
Oh my goodness. An 80s Chad.
I mean, right? Am I wrong or
No, you're 100% right. Because I noticed it as well. It's the first thing I zoned in on when he came in. But I was like, you know what? Okay.
Like, you half expect him to, like, walk in and be like, oh, yes, where are the tennis courts at? Just like...
the drink cart?
Yeah. Freaking ridiculous. Okay, what else you got? What you got for me?
I did not like... Okay, so number 1, trigger warning for a Flash... Because when they went into the freaking nebula, I about lost my retinas.
You're probably watching it in the dark too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole room lit up.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a light on behind the monitor here, so I was A-okay.
I was not.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But they hold literally there was no other color on the screen except for white, and I was like, yo. That was just painful.
Yeah. Well, how'd you feel about that cool explosion at the end, though? That was pretty neat, huh?
It looked like a firework. It was beautiful.
Well, so it basically was. So they rented this. It's they call it the Cow Palace. I don't really know the history of it. It's in San Francisco. It's basically a giant sound stage where they do all sorts of crazy stuff. and they covered the soundstage, like floor to ceiling, with black cloth. Maybe just the ceiling they covered with black cloth, and they had the camera directly underneath it, and it was a special camera that I think was created specifically to do stuff. No, the shots of the ship was a camera that they created for Star Wars. This was a high-speed camera, and they basically shot straight up to get the view, the angle of the explosion they wanted to do. And I think it's maybe considered to be the fastest speed shot on film. So they shot 2,500 frames per second. Normally a movie shoots at 24 frames per second. So basically 1,000 times the speed of a normal camera. And it used a spinning prism to basically bend image onto the film as the film was just like freaking whizzing past it, right? And that allowed them to increase their exposure time. So that's, and then of course they played it back at 24 frames per second. So on screen, I think the explosion is 104 seconds. So, a little more than a minute and a half, right? And when they actually shot it, it was like 1 second. It was like a 1 second pop, done. And they shot
ridiculous.
20.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so they shot 2,500 frames in that 1 little second. So pretty crazy. It's kind of neat that how these movies, especially we could go back to different eras and see different innovations in film, whether it's, Panavision or Cinerama or 3D or Smell-O-Vision or whatever, right? But it seems like in like the 70s and 80s especially, there were some really cool innovations. So we talked a little bit about with The Shining, we talked about Steadicam, and Rocky and The Shining were the first movies to kind of utilize that. And, this is, Star Wars creates new cameras to be able to shoot and explode models. And, this movie...
Evil Dead, the broom camera.
The broom cam. Push cam or whatever it was called. Or Vasicam. Yeah, so it's kind of neat, the sort of innovation that the 70s and 80s kind of brought to film. So what's next on your list?
So I guess I'll start from the beginning. The very sad part.
Okay.
I feel like I know Spock did it because of logic, but I feel like Spock didn't do it because of logic.
Mm-hmm.
He just wanted to save everybody, and it was so sweet. It made me so sad.
Well, and I think...
And is he really dead?
So, we'll get to that. So there's a moment when they know they can't get out. They know they're going to lose this, and he looks over at his friend in the command chair, and then he gets up and walks out without saying anything to anyone. And that moment, I believe, is Spock has always believed in his friend and the things that his friend can do. And so he's like, the only way I can help my friend continue to succeed is if I sacrifice myself. And that's what I think is like so beautiful about it. And that's why that's why this movie like jumps to my mind when I think of friends in a movie. It's this movie and that moment at the end, and he's like, you have always been and always shall be my friend. And I'm just like,
And when he was at the funeral and he was like, you've been more human than most, humans or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, that was so cute.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah, really, really nice testament to their friendship. So you want me to spoil, you're not going to go and watch Star Trek 3 or 4 or whatever now?
Probably not. But
right.
I feel like his coffin being shot out like a freaking bazooka.
The torpedoes,
towards this new planet, and then the ending being the shot of his coffin on the planet that is new life was kind of symbolic. So I figure he's going to come back.
So
what I hoped for.
So Leonard Nimoy didn't want to do this movie. He did the show, did the first movie, and he was like, I don't want to come back. And they were like, tell you what, come back and we'll give you a death and then you can just be done with it. And he was like, deal. And then it leaked out at the time, which is crazy that it leaked because, you know, think about this being in the era before, you know, no internet, you know, there's no cell phones or whatever. Even people, like, you used to have to pay extra money if you wanted to talk to somebody long distance. So, you know, word traveling quickly in the 80s was, you know,
Rare.
painfully slow compared to word traveling quickly now. Now it's a matter of a text message, right? And so word leaked out that Spock was going to die, and people like lost their minds and stuff. And so they actually shot the whole Kobayashi Maru thing where Spock dies at the beginning as sort of to throw people off, so they wouldn't expect it at the end, killing him off. So they made the movie, and as they were getting close to wrapping it, Leonard Nimoy was like, I kind of really enjoyed making this movie more than any of the other ones. Maybe I'm making a hasty decision. And the shot of the coffin on Genesis was not... They didn't tell anybody they were doing it. It was sort of a last-minute addition. And so Leonard Nimoy didn't even know that shot existed, and he saw it in the premiere and was like, oh, I'm going to get a call from Paramount. Like, they're going to call me and ask me about this. And I will tell you that the third film is called Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
That's so exciting. Also, it was like they were leaving an opening just in case.
Yeah. Well, and there's an interesting thing. Another reason why this is like such a great movie. There's sort of this common belief, or there was, that only even numbered Star Trek movies were the good ones. And so the first one's like not that good, and then 2 I think is great. I think it's a really, really fun film, and it is a little painfully slow to start because that's just kind of Star Trek a little bit. But I think once you get into the swing of it, it gets really, really good, and then it becomes really meaningful by the end. 3, The Search for Spock, I think is painfully slow. A few really important things happen in that. 4, excellent. A lot of people claim 4 as their favorite. I think that one's called The Voyage Home. 5, another super, super boring one. 6, one of my favorite ones. That one's called Undiscovered Country, which Undiscovered Country was... so that's a reference to Hamlet, maybe? It's Shakespeare. Don't quote me on that. It's Hamlet. But the idea that, like, the undiscovered country is like whatever is beyond life, like whatever is when you die, that's you move to the undiscovered country, like that's what's next, right? And so they were going to name this one the Undiscovered Country, and they changed the name multiple times. They brought this director back for part 6, so he named part 6 the Undiscovered Country, and it's one I really, really like. And then after that,
They had to have been doing it on purpose.
Yeah, maybe. And then the 7th film is the first in the Next Generation crew, the Captain Picard and them, and it's fine. It's not great. It's passable, and it sort of bridges the 2 film series a little bit. But then the 8th film, I don't just go through all these movies. The 8th film is called First Contact, and it is fucking brilliant. It's exciting. It's full of action. It's very, very funny. The special effects are great. The performances are excellent, and it builds on sort of the mythology from the Next Generation. Like, do you know what the Borg are?
Yes.
Okay, so it builds off of the Borg storylines from the TV show. So it's kind of interesting that the second original crew film was built off of a villain from the TV series, and then the second Next Generation group, their film is built off of a villain from the series. So, and then after that, they're just kind of like, until I really like the J.J. Abrams ones. I think they're really, really engaging, and it's fucking Chris Pine, like, and Zach Quinto and Anton Yelchin, Zoe Saldana. I mean, it's such a good, fun, exciting cast, and they find a really interesting way to tell the story over again in kind of a new way without negating any of the previous films, which is kind of brilliant. I'm a little sad that you're like, I don't think I'll watch anymore, but
I mean, if the opportunity arose, I probably would.
Yeah, we might, you know, Star Trek in general was kind of, it wasn't really on the wheel because I knew it was a series, and we can't spin the wheel and have you start on Star Trek V, right? Especially because that's not a very interesting one. It's boring as shit. It's basically them finding God and communicating with God. That's dumb. But yeah. So I didn't really know how to put it into the wheel. Now that you've seen one, I could maybe see us putting a couple of them on the wheel now. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't watched them in a long time. We could dabble. I mean, there's other series that you still need to see that you haven't seen anything of. So, those will come around as well. I have to figure out how to tackle stuff like Star Wars and whatnot with you. But you better know it's happening. I just don't know how yet.
I'm up for it.
Yeah, you've been a really good sport. I appreciate it. And you went into this like super open-minded, which I really liked, because it could have been really easy to just sort of dismiss interest in this altogether. So I appreciate you being open-minded, and I'm glad that it ended up affecting you in a positive way.
Yeah, I can't wait to brag.
That you saw Star Trek and you liked it?
Mm-hmm. The second one.
Yeah.
I think the second one. The second movie. What was it called again? Kahn?
The Wrath of Kahn. The Wrath of Kahn.
The Wrath of Kahn. Yeah. I'm going to brag about this to all my little nerdy friends.
Oh, yeah. All right. Do you have any other notes?
I don't.
You don't have any more notes? Okay.
No.
Let me just double check mine. I mean, I have a bunch of stuff, but some of it's just kind of like nonsense, like who really cares?
I care.
So, I'll talk a little bit about the Kobayashi Maru thing that makes a return in the J.J. Abrams ones. That's a very fun film. We might have to add that one to the list. That's a very, very fun movie. It's got some good cameos in it too. Let's see here. So they did a test screening of this film. Do you want to guess how the test audience reacted to Spock dying?
I'll take horrible for 100, Alex.
Yeah, they were very negative about it. They were very, very upset. He's like the fan favorite, and so because of that, they sort of leaked out that before the movie actually even released, they started leaking out that Spock will return or whatever. Because apparently word had gotten out that he died. So, okay, let's see. I don't know if there's any other really important. Oh, I was going to tell you about the suffocating thing. So, the glass room that Spock is in at the end of the film was totally sealed, and he had about 15 minutes of air in there, and so in between takes, they would have to, they would put tubes in there and turn on oxygen, so that way he would be able to continue to breathe inside that room. It took them 3 days to shoot that scene, and that
was probably terrifying.
Yeah, and every time they had to roll camera, they had to, they needed sound, so they'd have to turn off the oxygen. So it was like, okay, we got 15 minutes. Let's do this. So, yeah, pretty upsetting. They originally wanted him to have had his blood vessels burst, so they wanted him like covered in like green blood and stuff. And Leonard Nimoy was like, no. You can't go that far.
Be tasteful. Yes, be tasteful.
Yeah, I mean, he had the peeling skin already, so... and I think they wanted opaque glass, so like they were just seeing silhouettes, but they decided that it was really important for the characters to actually be able to like make eye contact. And although I don't think Spock could see him, but it was important for them to be able to connect.
Yeah, the way he was like, he portrayed it really well. Like, he looked disoriented when he came out to the glass and
bumped into it.
Weak and I'm gonna cry again.
Oh no!
So sad.
So the music, I do want to point that out. That's James Horner. I love James Horner. He did some really well. I mean, this is kind of reminiscent a little bit of Jerry Goldsmith, who did the original Star Trek, which. The motion picture. So you've heard the music from Star Trek, the motion picture, because it's the main theme from The Next Generation. So every time that show started, it was that theme. And then, James Horner's got a little bit of a John Williams thing, which I really like his, obviously I'm a John Williams guy. But James Horner did, James Cameron movies like Titanic and, I'm trying to think what else he did. Let me go through his list here. Not American Idol. Apparently he did something on American Idol. Must have written something for it. Love Actually, and trying to find some older ones. Some of the fun. Oh, The Grinch. He did have The Grinch with Jim Carrey. He did An American Tail, I think he did.
Fievel?
Yeah, Fievel. There were several Fievel things. Maybe they were shows, I'm not sure. Let's see here. He actually did music for our next movie, which we'll get to in a minute. He did The Land Before Time. He did Cocoon. Yeah, he did do the Fievel movies, both of them.
He has an impressive rap sheet.
Yeah, Blade Runner. I mean, just, but guy died in a plane crash. He was only 61 years old. And, I think he was flying like a small plane, and he crashed the plane and died. It's very sad. Brilliant writer. All right, now that I brought the podcast down, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's credited as having done some music for Hocus Pocus 2, which just recently released. They probably...
That's pretty cool.
He either must have done the original Hocus Pocus and they reused some of the music, or I don't know, they just used some song that he had written for a different movie and they used it in the film. Something like that.
I still haven't seen that.
I'm sorry?
I still haven't seen that Hocus Pocus 2.
Oh. It's fine. Sorry for all the Hocus Pocus fans out there that really... Look, that first movie's awful. This one's kind of more of the same. But, if you enjoy it and you have fun with it, then great. Right? This is for you. But I did watch it. It was fine. It was fine. All right. I don't think I have much else regarding Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Any other last remaining thoughts that you have for it, Beat?
Buff Khan. That's it.
Buff Khan, just Buff Khan. It sounds like you're like talking about a fitness expo, like Comic-Con. Like, I'm going to Buff Con. Where like
imagine there's just a whole con for con.
Yeah, like the keen con.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Oh no.
Let's get this ball rolling. Con.
Yeah.
We'll make it good.
I will tease that Kahn does return eventually in the Star Trek series.
How?
I can't.
Physically.
Maybe we'll just have to get there at some point. Maybe we'll have to get there.
My upgraded lungs allowed me to breathe in space.
Yeah, I'm good with explosions. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Okay.
My body absorbed impact.
Yeah.
My pecs took the blow.
Just has like one deflated pec. All right. That's enough of that. All right, Beat. Are you ready to find out what our next film is?
Yes, please.
So our next film, we have a very special guest that will be with us. I'm going to leave everybody in suspense on who that is. You will find out when the episode comes out. I'll tell you, but I'm not going to say it on the podcast.
I was like, no, I want to know.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you. And that's to build some suspense for the viewsters. Our next film is maybe it's a Christmas classic. Maybe, depending on what camp you're in, it's not a Christmas classic. We will be watching the action film Die Hard.
I'm so excited for this.
You've seen Die Hard, right?
Me?
Yeah.
I've seen clips of it,
Oh
but I've never physically sat through the entire movie. No.
So our guest has not seen Die Hard. And I'm completely shocked that you have not seen it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the movie. So, yay. So we will see people back in a week for Die Hard with special guests.
I know him.
Yeah. Until then, everyone, bon cinema.